Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the PAC Chat. I'm Felicia Malelli, Board Chair for NJPHIPAC, New Jersey Public Health Innovation Political Action Committee. And I am joined with Lori, our treasurer this evening. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Tonight, we are excited to endorse a special guest, Senator Holly Schepisi and Assemblyman Robert Auth, as well as Assemblywoman Deanne DeFuccio, that was not able to be with us this evening, but she is part of that endorsement. And they are all from Legislative District 39. Legislative District 39 includes municipalities in Bergen and Passaic County. If you are tuning in with us for the first time, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back. We are going to bring on our special guests momentarily, but before we do so, I just wanted to introduce the PAC to you, if you're not familiar with us, and our endorsement process. NJPHIPAC is a political action committee. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit, grassroots political action committee, and our board members are advocates who are passionate about protecting and strengthening health freedom here in New Jersey. We've been advocating for health freedom combined advocacy years over 3 decades. And we are very passionate about creating, building relationships with legislators that will influence the political landscape here in New Jersey regarding these issues that matter to us. I'm sure I'm speaking, I can speak for many of us when it comes to policymaking in the state. We, the people of New Jersey, are left feeling more and more helpless and disempowered. I can only imagine how many have these feelings, and those feelings could only be accelerating during these times, these very tumultuous times over the last couple months and years. So many of us personally have been affected by the multitude of the mandates being implemented and our freedoms being removed. So our goal with forming NJPHIPAC is to change that, to give you, the people of New Jersey, a seat at the political table. And that is exactly why we formed, to be heard. So the issues that matter to us have a platform. And again, the relationships are being built between the legislators and the community. So simply put, a PAC is a political action committee that collects contributions from individuals like yourselves to influence key campaigns in the state. And the PAC's primary goal is to seek candidates that align with our mission so that they are able to advocate for us in Trenton and be that voice for health freedom in the state. So the PAC's mission is to protect and strengthen the constitutionally guaranteed and fundamental rights of all New Jersey residents to make medical decisions for themselves and their families without coercion or undue constraint. The board members of the PAC have spent the last several months taking a bird's eye view of the legislators to determine which key elections we need to get behind in order to stack the Senate, the Assembly, the complete legislature with candidates that align with our mission. And we've created an endorsement process that was based on a set of standards, such as looking at candidates' past voting history. We have an NJPHIPAC survey that the candidates complete and submit back to us. We also meet with them prior to the endorsement for a good length of time, so we get to know them personally and hear their position on health freedom. When NJPHIPAC endorses a candidate, that endorsement is done with integrity and a very specific standard for measurement. So our goal in providing these endorsements is to give transparency. And when you see the seal, the NJPHIPAC seal of endorsement, you can rest assured that these candidates have been vetted by us and that they will be this voice for us in Trenton. And what do we need more than ever right now is that voice, these voices in Trenton. So please go to our website at www.njphipac.org/endorsements and check out who we've endorsed previously, and continue to stay connected to us to see our future endorsements. As the election is just several days away, these endorsements will keep rolling out. So join us here on this platform, the PAC Chat, to find out who is supporting us in regards to health freedom, bodily autonomy, and parental rights here in New Jersey. Now I'm going to pass it on to Lori to introduce our special guest this evening.
Thanks, Felicia. Without further ado, let's bring on NJPHIPAC's newest endorsements, the District 39 team, Senator Holly Schepisi, Assemblyman Rob Auth, and Assemblywoman DeFuccio couldn't make it, but she's with us as well. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We're excited to introduce you to the community. So first of all, on behalf of the PAC board, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for your continued courage to stand up on important issues, particularly parental rights, the preservation of the religious exemption, and choice when it comes to masking as well as vaccination. Being that you've always been vocal advocates on these issues, in terms of endorsements for the PAC, this was really an obvious and easy choice for us. Not only are these legislators accessible to their constituents, they listen and care about the issues their constituents face. If anyone's on social media, you know that you're going to get transparency and full picture from these legislators. And just to warm it up a bit, I'm going to ask each of you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. Senator Schepisi, can you share your profession outside of politics and what prompted you to enter politics in New Jersey to begin with?
Thank you, Lori. So I'm Holly Schepisi. I'm an attorney who had worked for about 8 years in Manhattan as a corporate mergers and acquisitions attorney. I was outside general counsel to publicly traded companies and did a lot in the entertainment world as well. I moved out to New Jersey and went from doing multi-billion-dollar transactions to literally hanging up a shingle inside my home after I gave birth to our daughter who just turned 18. And her first year of life, she was ill. Her kidney was shutting down. She had pretty significant surgery. And so that was kind of my first sea change for careers, where I had to make a choice between my career in Manhattan, taking care of my newborn child, and my child absolutely came first. My next big career shift actually took place the next time I was pregnant with my son Easton, who's now 10. And I went to an event. I had gotten very actively involved in the community, was involved with a lot of charitable organizations, Bergen Community College, a women's foundation. And I went to an event, and my predecessor, Charlotte Vanderhoek, started talking to me about how she had wanted to retire at some point in politics, but wanted a strong woman to kind of fill her shoes. And she hadn't yet had somebody who promised her they would do that. And in a weak moment, I shook her hand and I said, okay, if you ever retire, I'll run for your seat. I had never run for office before. I didn't realize she meant she wanted to retire then. She didn't realize I was actually 6.5 months pregnant with my son. And 2 weeks after I gave birth, C-section, spinal headaches, staples in me, I went door to door with the newborn in my arms, and that started my political career.
Thank you so much. I mean, it speaks to us too. When you have kids, everything changes, hence why we're all here right now. But we appreciate that. Thank you. Assemblyman Auth, how about you? Oh, you're muted.
Here we go.
Thanks.
I was very interested in your comments earlier on about being disenfranchised and not having a voice at the table. That's actually how my political career began. I was very content to stay out of politics. As a matter of fact, I had been the vice president and the president of my high school, and on my graduation night, my brothers and sisters were all taking our usual walk with the family dog, and my father came out and said, you know, hey Robert, I noticed you really like the politics. And I'm like, I came off a couple of wins. I'm like, gee, why not? Of course, yes, I do. And he said, would you do me a favor And I said, well, hey, Dad, I love you. I'll do whatever you ask me to. And he said, stay out of politics. It's a dirty business. And so he asked me that, and I kept that promise until approximately 1991, at which point I asked him to let me relieve me from the promise, because what had happened was my wife and we started insurance business and things were going along great. And then Governor Florio came in and decided he was going to monkey around with the insurance industry. And it put people like myself, who are small agencies in urban areas. My wife's from Cuba originally, so we settled in North Bergen as our office, because a lot of Latin clients down there who weren't being serviced properly. And so we had this little agency, and then Governor Florio decided he was going to shut the insurance plan down. That's where we were primarily writing our auto business. And about 2,000 of my contemporaries went out of business. But I was lucky enough to had met Senator Cardinale's chief of staff many years ago. He lived in Old Japan like I did. And when I went for help, I didn't know he was working for him. He was the senator's chief of staff, and they decided that they were going to help me, and they did. So I saw politics actually perform a very great task for its constituents in that particular instance. And I remained a volunteer aide to the senator for about 25 years. And then a seat opened up when Bob Schroeder decided not to run for reelection. And I went into a convention, and there were 5 contestants. I was one of the 5, and I won that convention. And so in 2014, I entered the assembly, and I've been there since that time. And that's what motivated me to do it. It's just because the little guy was getting a kick in the rear end, and I just wasn't about to put up with it. So there you have it.
Thank you so much. Now, for those of you listening who don't know who Senator Cardinale is, he was the first night I really cared about politics, probably, enough to really care in my life, was the Senate Health Committee meeting for our religious exemption bill. And he spoke on our behalf, very well, actually, in that committee meeting. And, he since passed last year, but I just want to put that in there because we are grateful to him for what he said that night. Anyway, so sorry. Thank you. Thank you both for your answers, and thank you for always having our back. We really appreciate that. And I'll pass it to Felicia.
And who better to fill the seat, but thank you, Senator Holly Schepisi, for being now that voice for us. Thank you for sharing that story, because, both of you said it, it's a calling, it's a service. And I see that that's what really brought you here. And, politics does get a bad rap. But when you're really coming as, again, like from the service position to be a voice for your constituents, I know both of you have always had open doors to all your constituents on these issues. And that's what matters to the community, that you're there for them and being that service position. So it shows with how you got into politics. So I'm going to take you a little deeper into some of the current events issues that we've got going on. I'll start with you, Senator. Things seem to be escalating, as you know, very quickly with these vaccine mandates, and for things like employment, including state employees and school personnel, healthcare workers. We were all actually in Trenton today. There was over 1,000 people there in Trenton to say no to these mandates. So can you share with us your thoughts on these requirements, and how has championing this issue affected your campaign specifically?
So it's interesting. As you guys know, I'm actually pretty pro-vaccination. I'm personally vaccinated. My husband's vaccinated. Even my 18-year-old daughter is. That being said, I am a staunch advocate for medical choice and medical freedom. And what I choose to do may not be the best option for somebody else. And I've had reactions to vaccines throughout my life. I'm very cautious about what I get, what I don't get. My 10-year-old son has had significant reactions to certain vaccines where my daughter did not. My daughter got the COVID vaccine. I have zero intention of getting my 10-year-old son the COVID vaccine because of his own personal issues with vaccines, coupled with the fact that he had the Delta variant this summer. He had a stuffy nose for half a day. When I weigh the cost-benefit analysis of potential side effects from a vaccine in a 10-year-old as compared to the fact that he had a stuffy nose for half a day, as a parent right now, I want to be able to make that choice of waiting and see what occurs in the future. So what's ended up happening is my opposition turned it around and sent to probably about 40,000 households a flyer that darkened my face, made my eyes look like I'm Satan, and sent it out saying, are you aware that your senator is the biggest anti-vaxxer in the entire state, that essentially I believe the world is flat, that I don't believe in science, that I want our children to die. I mean, just real incredulous type of stuff. And so what I did in return is I took a picture of myself holding my own vaccination card and I put it up on social media. And I said, you know what? There is a huge difference that our opponents right now can't understand. You can be personally pro-vaccination and anti-government mandate. You can do something for yourself and fight for others who choose a different pathway. And the fact that there is no consideration given to natural immunity, that there is no consideration given to healthcare workers who had the virus, who recovered from it, who still have antibodies, and say, you know what, we would prefer not to get vaccinated at this moment in time because we do have the antibodies. And the fact that they can't say that, they can't speak out, they're being terminated. The heroes of 6 months ago are now, the feared and being terminated of today. And they need somebody to be their voice. And so we are their voice. And I don't understand where some of these mandates and such a hardline approach is coming from, because voluntarily, if you look at the eligible population in Bergen County of who's been vaccinated, it's over 86% at this point. So it's something where, to take such a hardline approach at this moment in time in New Jersey really doesn't even make any sort of sense, because we had achieved a greater percentage and a greater threshold than what the governor had put forth as his target. I think that come lame duck, you're going to see once again a attempt to strip away all religious exemptions. You're going to see an attempt to, and anybody who's on this knows it's virtually impossible to get a medical exemption to begin with. But I've heard firsthand from doctors in our facilities or hospitals who are being threatened with their own livelihood that if they get caught writing a medical exemption, they could lose privileges at their hospitals and different places that they work. And so you see this kind of, people feel as if they have nowhere to go. And, no matter what their personal experience may be, no matter how legitimate their personal experience is, it's, suck it up and do what we tell you to do, or you're terminated, you're ostracized, and you're put into a separate class of person now. And that's what we're fighting against.
Absolutely. You mentioned all of the inconsistencies. There's so many, and thank you. I think that was very wise of you for doing what you did, and I love the message. I saw it myself with the vaccine card, and just nip that right in the butt and just be completely transparent with your constituents. Bio individuality. It's not a one size fits all. I can tell you that from my own experience. I'm a mom of 4. I have 2 children that I have seen consequences of certain vaccines from, and other 2 that are not affected. It's everybody's different. That by the way we all eat, right? Certain foods, certain things, and no medicine is a one size fits all. And you've seen that in your experience. And I commend you tremendously for being so aware and also vocal to those points. Thank you very much. Thank you. Assemblyman, for you, Governor Murphy's mentioned vaccine passports in New Jersey on the table as an option in the near future. That was actually just a quote from the insidernewjersey.com. How do you feel about implementing vaccine passports here in New Jersey, and what are the implications of that?
Well, let me preface my answer with a statement. I have a tendency to flirt with libertarianism. So anything that would suggest that you have to produce some sort of documentation to travel to in between states throughout different countries that would be mandated by an executive of a particular state is an anathema to me. I wouldn't support it. I would vociferously defend every single citizen in this country, their right to travel freely within the country, to travel freely to other countries without any sort of medical passport. Certainly in the United States, that's absolutely absurd. Other countries may have certain policies, and if they have a policy and you object to it, well, then don't go there. That's fine. But within the contiguous United States, I would say that it's an absolute absurdity, and I don't think anybody would abide by that, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, we're going backwards. It's division, it's complete division, and we know that the science doesn't justify it. As Senator said, Bergen counties, I think it was 86%, almost at beyond that herd immunity number, and we know that the vaccines or therapeutic injections, as I like to call them, are not always successful. So there's that inconsistency there.
If they're as good as they say they are, then someone who's vaccinated shouldn't have to worry.
Yeah,
that's the issue. And if someone wants to travel and is not vaccinated and wants to take that risk, that's entirely up to them. That's their prerogative, and it's not the government's prerogative to tell them that they have to do anything other than they choose to do for their own personal medical health. Period.
Yeah. Thank you. Senator, I'm going to come back to you if that's okay, with a question we had planned for Assemblywoman, but surrounding the masking issue, it has grown our movement exponentially. Parents are concerned about this, and they don't want it, and they're going to school boards and they're fighting for this because there are consequences or unknown consequences to even that, because it's an experiment to mask the children. And there's no science behind the idea of masking for 6+ hours a day, 5 days a week. When the community is open, the state is open in every other way, our children are still masked. What do you think about this?
So it's interesting. I'll be extraordinarily candid on this. I've vacillated myself on this. Being a mom whose 10-year-old son did not have a full day of school for 545 days. That was a year and a half of learning that we're never going to get back. And so when, we were hearing schools may open, may not open, other than mandating, the kids get vaccinated for, something that wasn't even eligible to them. It was kind of like, what, at this point, I'll do anything to get my child back into school. And if he's got to wear a mask, I'll suck it up, go wear a mask, just get back into school and start learning again. I think one of the things that parents, it's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I think for a lot of people who are even pro-vaccination, didn't mind about like older kids wearing masks. But once the executive order came down a couple of weeks ago that 2-year-olds now have to wear masks in school 6, 7, 8 hours a day, where even the World Health Organization has specifically indicated that children under the age of 5 should not be wearing masks for extended periods of time because of the psychosocial issues, because of the developmental milestone issues. And nobody could explain why at this moment in time, this new executive order came out. And so I've been kind of quoted quite a bit in the press over the past couple of days, just pointing out the hypocrisy and the nonsensical nature of these executive orders and these promulgations that come out when you have, a 2,000 person event for the Hudson County Democrats, when you have a several thousand person event in Asbury Park, when every time you go onto social media, you see these enormous events throughout the state with, all of the very same people who are supporting and putting forth these policies being, in violation of CDC guidelines, which are purportedly how all these executive orders are being issued, and not wearing masks, going to events, not following kind of the same guidelines that they're forcing upon our children, including our youngest of children. And when you call them out on it, it's kind of like, well, I'm vaccinated. Well, actually, that's fine and dandy and great, but the very same CDC guidelines that you love to point to specifically state that notwithstanding the fact that you are vaccinated, if you are indoors in a large gathering in a quote unquote high risk area, you should be wearing a mask. So it really makes people put their hands up, and it's everything that's wrong about government, because it really is, we're going to say that you must do this, you can't question, God forbid you question, you're an anti-vaxxer, you don't believe in science, you're this, you're that. And we're not going to do the very things that we're forcing you to do. And when you call us out, rightfully so, somehow you're the knucklehead. So none of this makes any sense at this point.
It doesn't. Really, but in some ways it does. The timing of it, as you said, with the children masking, as I referred to, Governor Murphy has stated that it's not off the table for this mandate. And I don't know, it makes sense to me. They're going to mask them until there's a solution. If you go for the solution and you go for the vaccine, guess what? You get your mask removed.
And
then you'll carrot.
But you know what? They didn't even do that, because you look at the high schools, you look at the older children who have been, vaccinated. Yeah. They're not allowed to remove their masks.
Yeah.
So teachers who have been vaccinated aren't allowed to remove their masks. So, for myself as a parent, what do we have to hit? What is this special number? What is this, how do we get out of this? Or are we just being told for the rest of the time that your children are educated, they've got to wear a mask?
I would love to hear that question. I would. What do we have to do to get out of this? And what I've been telling our community, or we've been at the PAC, that 4 more years of this administration does not look good to the trajectory of health freedom and, bodily autonomy. And if you just look at the course that we're on right now, it's not going to get any better. There is no just quick answer to this. It's only going to become, the more mandates, the removal of the religious exemption. We know that Senator Vitale, the head of the health committee, has already stated in the new year they will most likely aim to remove that religious exemption, if not sooner. I think you may have stated about lame duck as being a potential for that removal as well.
And I'll leave, Assemblyman Auth can speak, but what everybody, regardless of where you stand on any of these issues, what everybody should be concerned about is the lack of transparency, the lack of discussion, even amongst, the branches of government. I sat on the Senate Health Committee. I sat on the Assembly Health Committee. We've been in this for 19 months. We have not had one open, honest hearing on any of these issues. And everything was just literally the legislature gave up their power and authority to the governor to unilaterally make these decisions so that no public discussion would take place. And that is wrong. And if we continue down this pathway, you have my pledge, I'm sure you have Assemblyman Auth's pledge, we will start to hold those hearings ourselves. We will start to hold those open, honest discussions ourselves. Because without that, nobody is going to have any trust in what moves forward in our state.
Absolutely. I'm sure our community, our viewers are watching and can understand and see why this is an obvious endorsement for us. I'm going to pass it along to Lori to ask some questions about what 2022 will look like for you guys.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, guys. So the first thing I want to say, too, is I do find it that I'm seeing how hard you guys work to campaign, to be legislators. This takes up a lot of your time, researching the issues, actually reading bills, which sometimes is not something you expect, which I didn't know before coming into politics. But, you know, the time that you take to do all this and the energy you devote, you know, we really appreciate it. To have people on our team that just really take the time and not only know the issues, but speak to the issues and tell the constituents the issues. There's nothing like that. I mean, to feel included and to feel like you have a seat, to feel like you understand what's going on. We thank you for always being transparent with that and sharing that with us. Now, the other part of it is the part you're talking about with the governor. The legislators essentially gave away their power. I mean, we elected these 120 people, and you know, some of them said, oh, no, you can just make the decision for us. And that was a really big moment that I don't think gets enough attention, to take, you know, 18 months of our lives and just give it away to somebody, to one person, to make unilateral decisions across the board on big issues. Our kids going to school, how many children that affected, how many families that affected, how many jobs of families that affected. That was really a lot. And I always appreciate you guys for always telling us what's going on and sharing that with us, and obviously being against things like that. So anyway, Senator Schepisi, can you share with us what you are particularly passionate about championing in New Jersey, given the current climate?
Given the current climate, I mean, there's so much, and I'm going to keep this short because otherwise we could be here for 2 days. Helping our small businesses. Our small businesses, because of the shutdown, got crushed. We lost in perpetuity close to 40% of the small businesses in the state, which are, you know, all of our neighbors, our friends. And for all of the, you know, hashtag politics of, you know, the Democrats support women and minorities and the Republicans are the big bad party of that, you know, big government, big corporations, we're the ones fighting for women. We're the ones fighting for minorities. 60% of those businesses that closed their doors were owned by women and minorities in the state. And they are the ones who called Bob's office. They're the ones who called Deanne. These are the people who called my office, sobbing their eyes out, having lost everything through no fault of their own because of just random government mandates that, you know, would prevent the local store in Westwood, New Jersey from opening, but Target was allowed to be open. And so, you know, it's righting that ship and trying to help those people. It's fighting for medical choice and medical freedom across the board. It's fighting against some of the ridiculous mandates, including those that have made us the most densely populated state, which have the highest COVID rates as a result. And, you know, continuing to double down as we say we're an environmentally friendly state, as we're developing every last available parcel of this state with no consequence. So we have a lot of things to work on. We have a lot of things to fight for, and stop the ridiculous taxing of people, forcing them to leave our state. in the middle of COVID, we raised our corporate business tax to the highest in the nation. If at the federal level, if the current spending program and commensurate tax increases go through, we will have the highest corporate business tax in the entire industrialized world. So these are some of the things coming down the pike that we fight against every day that we are down there.
Thank you so much. We agree, and I think that this year more voters will turn out that previously didn't vote, because now this year has affected their lives tremendously. Assemblyman Auth, speaking to our community of people across the state, what can they do to encourage their legislators, regardless of party affiliation, to reach across the aisle to actually affect change with regard to these issues?
Well, I must tell you, if I were a member of the general public, and I had been for a long time, I wouldn't put much stock in this current legislature. I'm sick and damn tired of the current legislature running roughshod over the public, telling them what they can do, they can't do, taking away their rights at every possible turn. And it's time for us to sit down and say to ourselves, what is our plan to change the construct of the legislature? What's our plan to change the complexion of the legislature so you have more Republicans in the legislature and you have an opportunity to live your life like you are advocating here. Live your life where you can be a parent and individually decide for yourself and your family how your life is going to be run, whether it's for masking issues, vaccination issues, education issues. All these things are activating voters right now that have never come out before or would normally not come out in this election. And it's all because of these issues that have actually put your group together. It's your group is being put together because you've been oppressed, and it's about time we sit down and figure out a plan. And this is what my goal. You want my goal for the next 2 years if I get elected is to figure out a way to pick up 3, 4, 5 more seats in the New Jersey Assembly so we can be closer to the majority, or we can stop them because we have enough votes to make sure that the governor or they can't override the governor's veto if we have a Republican like Jack Ciattarelli for governor. And that's what we're going to do. I mean, my job is to do that because right now you're not being represented properly. I'm sick and tired of it, and that's what my goal is. Come hell or high water. All the other things that the senator mentioned, those are all out on the table for us to work on. But if we don't have a seat at the table, we don't have a majority, none of that makes any difference at all. That's where I am. That's where I'm going. Thank you.
I admire your passion, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we see people on social media saying things to you guys, well, why don't you change it? Why don't you change this? Why don't you do anything? And I don't think they realize that your hands are tied. You're one vote out of, in Assembly 80 and Senate 40. It's, we don't have that majority, and, it's different. But, I have seen you actually go across the aisle, and I saw you in January 2020 in the hallway with a Democrat's assemblyman, and I was admiring that moment, because in that moment I said to myself, this is a nonpartisan issue. This is an issue that brings people together, and people over politics.
Well, that's Assemblyman Jamal Holly. I know exactly
Truth.
the instance you're talking about. Yep. And he's taken a lot of heat for taking a position. That guy, I have a lot of respect for him. He told his party to go jump in a lake.
I so appreciate that, and I think we need to reward that. Having a partisan system, where it's not encouraged to go against your party when you feel differently, it isn't, the best way to run things. But I appreciate you, reaching your hand across the aisle on an issue you knew your constituents really cared about, and, making that connection. So thank you. And thank you both. So lastly, I'd like to hear from each of you on what health freedom means to you. Senator Schepisi?
Health freedom is being able to make a choice as to what's right for you, your family, with your own medical professionals based upon your own individual circumstances.
Thank you. Assemblyman Auth?
I echo that comment. My wife and my family's health issues are our personal business. I have insurance. I have a a doctor that I go see. If he sends me to another physician, I go see them. They're going to give me a string of answers to problems that I have. If I don't like the answer, guess what? I get to go for a second opinion. Uh, Doctors are never entirely in agreement at any particular time on any particular subject. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. Most recently, doctors who have been for years telling us to take a baby aspirin every day, if you want to keep your blood thin and all that stuff, now have come out and said, you really shouldn't be taking a baby aspirin every single day because you could have bleeding problems. So it changes all the time. And I listen to doctors tell me, Robert, you should drink a glass of Pinot Noir every night because it's good for your arteries. And then my other doctor says, you shouldn't drink any wine. I don't listen to that doctor. I listen to my first doctor. He tells me drink a glass of wine, and I do exactly what he says. There's never going to be consensus on health issues, and that's why it's up to the people who's impacted by the decision to make the decision, and that's it. If it's my decision to make, let me make it, and that's the way I feel about it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I'll pass it to Felicia to wrap us up.
Did I lose you?
Nope,
Hello?
we're there. We're here. We're here. Absolutely. There you have it, folks. Yep. You hear us? We're here.
Yep, I got you. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. This is a basic human rights issue. And it's wonderful to have legislators such as yourself to be this voice. And we, of course, echo your sentiments on what health freedom is. You said it, I think you both nailed it. Again, it's that basic human rights. It's being able to make a decision for yourselves and your family based on your own bio-individuality, because that's, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And maintaining that choice is imperative in New Jersey and beyond. We want to make sure, I always say, with these issues, we want to stop the bleed. We want to stop it here. And the country looks to us. When we had that success in 2020 regarding the religious exemption repeal bill, that was a statement to the country that we are not going to accept this. And with legislators such as yourself, that makes it possible. So we thank you for all of your efforts in the Health Committee and being that voice in the chambers for us. And we know that you will continue to do that moving forward. Is there any last words I want to just give you regarding how your campaign could be further supported over these?
Well, I'd like to make one last
Absolutely.
statement, if I could.
Sure. Go ahead.
Did you freeze?
I'm very upset. You talk about the religious exemption. I don't think there should have to be a religious exemption. It should just very simply be, if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. You shouldn't have to do it under the guise of religion. What about atheists who just don't want to do it? I think it's absolutely appalling that we should have to use that as a reason to exempt ourselves. It should just simply be, I don't want to take it. I don't want to be injected.
You bring up a really good point. And in other states, there still is the philosophical. We used to have a philosophical exemption in New Jersey, and obviously that was removed. And you bring up a really good point, because that's partially the reason that, even in 2019, that the issue came about, because they saw, after putting the flu mandate on preschool age children, that number of religious exemptions went up. And they claimed that there was, it was getting too high. And now, can you imagine those numbers of people using the religious exemption because of the COVID vaccine or COVID injection? So it's a real issue. People may not even be using it for the right way, but they just want to be able to decide what goes in their body. And
it's sad that they have to use that as an option to exempt themselves from it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we force people into a situation like that. It should be their own personal belief. It should be their own personal decision, health decision of their physician themselves. even if they don't have a physician. If they don't want to do that, that's their business. We're individuals in this country, and once we give that up, we're doomed for disaster.
Yeah. And you know, the schedule of the vaccines, when we were a child, I had like 20 maybe vaccines. Now the schedule is much larger than that. I think it's somewhere around 72 from birth to adulthood. And there's so many more in the pipeline. So when you remove that religious exemption or any exemption or the ability to cite an exemption, you're just creating a threshold for what's to come in that pipeline, and you don't know. So what's your number? When is it enough? There has to be a line drawn here.
Well, I think one of the big issues that a lot of people don't understand with that particular legislation as it was initially drafted and presented to us is that schedule could be expanded at any time with no legislative input based upon whatever was determined by the Department of Health to put on it. And so, I raise the question, is Gardasil now going to be a mandatory one in order for children to attend school? Are, different ones that had historically always been ones that were left to, the decision of an individual, now going to be mandatory as well in order for our children to be educated? And it was, for myself, that was kind of unconscionable that, a child would no longer be able to get educated based upon some schedule of to be determined additional vaccines that we would have no public discussion about or legislative oversight on. And so there were a whole host of things, including eliminating what's almost impossible to get, which is a medical exemption, and further reducing the ability of people to even get a medical exemption. So, it's a bill that once you actually kind of parse it out and look at all of the facets of it, it takes away a lot more than just a religious exemption. So I think to wrap it up, based upon what you were saying, for anybody who's on this, I can't impress upon you enough how important it is for you to vote in November, how important it is for you not to sit this one out. Governor Murphy got elected 4 years ago with 62% of the people at this state who were eligible to vote deciding not to cast a vote. 62%.
That's really high.
So if you want your voices heard, if you want people to pay attention, we need more people in the Assembly. We need more people in the Senate, and we need a new governor. And we need your help to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hey, one last thing too. You constantly hear this notion about a million more Democrats in the state than Republicans. If that was true, then how come they don't win by 1 million votes every time they go out and vote? This election is a pivotal election for what you're advocating. And I just want to remind you, Assemblyman Tom Kean, who became governor, won by 1,800 votes the first time he ran. 1,800 votes, the entire state. The second time he ran, it was a blowout. But Jack has an opportunity to win here. Murphy's base is flaccid right now. They're not interested in him. He can't activate him. They're not showing any interest in the election whatsoever. He's being forced to go back into urban areas to try and reinvigorate his voter base. This is an opportunity of a lifetime to get Jack into this position where he'll actually be able to effectuate some change that is very important to you folks. And I hope that you do exactly that. Get out and vote, but get some of your friends to come out and vote too. And it'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was just going to leave off with that. I'd like to encourage our viewers. There's 10 days of voting this year. So in 10 days, can you get at minimum a friend a day for 10 days and make sure that they get out to vote and that they share that challenge as well with their friends and family? Because if we do that and remind people to get out to vote, we do have an opportunity, which Assemblyman, you just expressed that there is that chance. There's a lack of luster for Governor Murphy and a need for change. So I think it's definitely an option. And we were just talking about the religious exemption repeal bill, and I just want our viewers to know it is a very viable threat. As I said earlier in the call, that this conversation has come up with legislators that have brought to the table that it's a possibility for lame duck, which is that time between mid-November to mid-January, where that bill could be heard again. And the implications of that removal are huge, as the senator just expressed, that the pipeline of vaccines is very large. Possible mandates for things that aren't even communicable in a classroom. So it's important to stand up for these mandates. And the way that we do that is to get out to vote, volunteer your time to make calls, get to your local district leaders and see how you can do some door knocking over the next 2 weekends. And again, share that message with your friends and family about getting out to vote. So thank you so much for your time, Senator and Assemblyman. We're really excited to have you on because we were really interested in showing our viewers that we do have allies in Trenton, and supporting their candidacy and supporting them during this election will help continue that advocacy for us and that voice in Trenton. So thank you so much. To our community members, we also want to let you know that, again, the PAC runs on contributions, and no contribution is too small to show the legislators that we are a voice and our issue matters, to get that they need to get behind us, because we are a substantial voting bloc. And what matters to legislators, many of them, are votes and dollars. And so if we when the contributions come to us, it's like signing a petition to these legislators to let them know this issue matters. So go to our website, www.njphipac.org, and support New Jersey FIPAC for our ability to elevate and continue to elevate the candidates that have vowed to support our mission. We hope everybody has a wonderful night. Please continue to support us and stay connected. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you.
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.